She was born into a world she could not see. Yet from the very beginning, there was something about her that drew people's attention. Her parents often said that she had a spirit that shone brighter than anyone else's. Even as a baby, she seemed to notice sounds and movements in ways that were beyond ordinary. She would smile at the rhythm of a lullaby, or coo when someone played a soft tune on the radio. Her blindness did not define her, but it shaped her experiences, and it gave her a unique perspective of the world around her. As she grew, the house was filled with music. Her mother played simple tunes on the piano, and her father hummed songs while cooking or fixing things. She learned to recognize her father's footsteps and her mother's voice. Every sound had a place, every note had meaning. By the time she was 4, she could hum entire songs she had only heard a few times. The family noticed her sensitivity to sound and realized she had a natural gift. They decided to nurture it, knowing that music could be her way of expressing herself in a world that often seemed distant. Her first encounter with a piano was accidental. A neighbor had a small upright piano, and one afternoon, her mother took her there. She sat on the bench, hands resting lightly on the keys. The moment her fingers pressed down, the notes responded, and she froze, captivated by the sensation. The piano seemed to speak to her in a language she could understand. She didn't see the instrument, but she felt its heart, its soul, and it became her companion. Every day after that, she returned, letting her fingers explore melodies she could only imagine. She could feel the difference between a high note and a low note, and she started to play simple songs by memory. At school, she faced challenges that most children did not. Simple things, like reading a textbook or following a chalkboard, required more effort and patience. Some children were kind, offering to help or explain things. Others were impatient or dismissive, seeing her blindness as a weakness rather than understanding her abilities. But she never let it break her spirit. She learned to navigate with confidence, memorizing her environment and relying on her sharp hearing and touch. Music became her refuge, a place where she could be herself without fear of judgment. Her parents were protective but encouraging. They knew the world could be cruel, but they also believed in their daughter's strength. They enrolled her in music lessons with a teacher who had experience teaching blind students. The teacher was patient, using Braille music sheets and tactile methods to guide her fingers. At first, it was slow progress. She had to learn to recognize each note by sound and touch, to memorize patterns, and to build muscle memory in her fingers. But she approached every lesson with determination, her love for music outweighing any frustration. The teacher often remarked on her dedication, saying she had a rare combination of patience, intuition, and passion. Outside of lessons, she would spend hours at home experimenting. She made up her own songs, letting her imagination flow through her fingers. The family would sit quietly, listening as she played melodies that felt surprisingly complete, full of emotion that seemed to come from deep within her. Even neighbors who visited would stop and listen, often moved to tears. Her music was not just sound. It was feeling, a story told without words. It was remarkable how someone who could not see the world could make it come alive through sound. Despite her talent, life was not without its hardships. She noticed how people would treat her differently, sometimes speaking louder as if she could not understand, or explaining things in an overly simple way. She encountered pity and condescension more than admiration. Children at school would sometimes tease her, calling her names or laughing when she struggled with a task that others found easy. But she also learned resilience. Every time she faced mockery, she reminded herself that her value was not determined by the opinions of others. Her music became her voice, louder and more powerful than words. There were moments of doubt, of course. Nights when she felt frustrated that her fingers did not move as quickly as she wanted, or when she struggled to memorize a complex piece. But then, she would remember the joy she felt the first time she touched the piano, the thrill of discovering a new melody, the way music could connect her to people even without words. Those feelings carried her forward. She learned that passion and perseverance were stronger than fear or disappointment. Her relationship with her family was a source of constant strength. They never treated her as fragile or incapable. Her mother would sometimes sit beside her and play duets, guiding her hands through harmony. Her father would clap along, creating rhythms to inspire her. Her siblings, when she had them, joined in playful improvisation sessions, laughing and teasing each other as they explored sounds. The home became a sanctuary, a place where creativity and love intertwined. In this environment, she grew confident in her abilities, realizing that the world outside might not always be kind, but within her home, she could thrive. One day, a local music teacher who had heard of her talent visited her school. He listened to her play and was amazed at her skill, considering her age and the fact that she had never seen the piano. He suggested that she participate in a small local competition. The idea both thrilled and terrified her. She had never performed in front of strangers before. The thought of someone judging her music made her nervous. But her parents encouraged her gently, saying that it was an opportunity to share her gift with others. After some hesitation, she agreed. Preparing for the competition was intense. She practiced for hours each day, refining her pieces, memorizing the sequence of notes, and imagining how her music would reach the audience. She felt the piano keys with renewed focus, letting her fingers glide and strike with precision. Sometimes, she would stumble and feel frustrated, but each setback became a lesson. She realized that the process was as important as the performance itself. Her confidence grew, not because she was unafraid, but because she had faced challenges and persisted. The day of the competition arrived, and she felt a mix of fear and excitement. The room was filled with spectators, some unaware of her blindness, others curious about how she would perform. She took her place at the piano, hands hovering above the keys, taking a deep breath. When she began to play, the room fell silent. Each note was deliberate, each melody full of emotion. Her music told a story of struggle, hope, and triumph. People watched in awe as someone so young, so different, created something so moving. The applause at the end was thunderous, and for the first time, she realized that her talent could break through barriers and touch hearts. That experience became a turning point. It showed her that despite the world's doubts, she had a voice that could not be ignored. Music was not just a hobby or a pastime. It was her way of communicating, of being seen and understood in a way words could not capture. From that moment, she became more determined than ever to pursue her passion, knowing that her blindness did not limit her. It gave her music a depth and soul that was uniquely hers. In the years that followed, she continued to explore music, each day learning something new. Her repertoire grew, as did her confidence. She began to dream of performing in bigger venues, of sharing her music with more people. Yet, no matter how far she went, she remembered the early days, her parents' encouragement, the first time she touched the piano, the quiet afternoons at the neighbor's house. Those memories kept her grounded, reminding her that her journey was not only about talent, but about perseverance, love, and the belief that one could overcome obstacles and still create beauty. Through it all, she remained humble and kind, never letting her growing skill make her proud or dismissive of others. She knew what it was like to struggle, to face doubt and judgment, and she wanted her music to inspire and comfort others. In a world that often overlooked those who were different, she was slowly becoming a symbol of hope. Her story had only just begun, but the foundation had been laid. A blind girl with unwavering spirit, a deep love for music, and the courage to face a world that did not always understand her. By the time she reached her early teens, her talent on the piano had grown noticeably. Friends, neighbors, and even teachers were amazed at how she could reproduce complex pieces entirely by memory. Her music had an emotional depth that many older musicians struggled to achieve. Yet, despite her skill, there were moments when her confidence wavered, especially when she faced the wider world beyond her supportive family and teachers. One day, a renowned pianist visited her city to perform in a local concert hall. His reputation was immense. He was known for his technical brilliance and strict standards. Her music teacher, excited by the opportunity, arranged a brief meeting so that she could play a piece for him. The idea both thrilled and terrified her. She admired the pianist, whose recordings she had listened to countless times, and dreamed of impressing him. But she also feared judgment, imagining that he might see her as nothing more than a child who could not measure up. When the day came, she entered the grand hall, her small frame dwarfed by the high ceiling and the polished stage. She could hear the faint echoes of footsteps, the murmurs of people moving around, and the distant hum of the piano strings being tuned. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself that she had worked hard and prepared for this moment. With her teacher's gentle encouragement, she approached the piano, ran her fingers across the keys, and took a deep breath. As she began to play, her music filled the room, soft at first, then rising with strength and clarity. Each note resonated, carrying the emotions she felt inside. She closed her eyes, feeling the vibrations, letting her hands move naturally over the keys. For a moment, it seemed as though the hall itself was holding its breath, listening to the purity of her sound. But when she finished the piece and opened her eyes, the reaction was not what she had hoped for. The pianist looked at her with a mixture of surprise and doubt. Instead of offering encouragement, he made a comment that stung deeply. He laughed lightly and said she was cute for trying, but implied that someone like her could never reach true mastery. The words were carefully chosen, polite to some, but sharp to her. For the first time, she felt the weight of the world's judgment pressing down on her. She had faced challenges before, but this was different. This was someone she had admired, telling her that her efforts were insignificant. Her teacher tried to comfort her, telling her not to take the comments to heart. But she felt crushed. For a few days, she could not bring herself to play the piano. The instrument, which had always been her refuge, now seemed like a reminder of failure. She questioned herself, wondering if she was truly talented, or if her blindness limited her in ways she had not yet understood. Nights were long with doubt and worry, and she often cried quietly, letting the frustration and pain pour out. Yet, amid the despair, something inside her refused to give up. She remembered the first time she touched the piano, the thrill of discovering new melodies, and the joy her music brought to her family. She thought of the audience at the local competition, who had been moved by her performance. Slowly, she realized that one person's opinion did not define her worth. She could let the pianist's words crush her, or she could use them as fuel to prove not just him, but herself, that she was capable. She returned to the piano with renewed determination. Every day, she practiced with a single-minded focus, pushing herself to explore techniques she had never attempted before. She listened to recordings of famous pianists, studied their style, and experimented with ways to add her own emotion to the music. She created small challenges for herself, learning difficult pieces, memorizing longer sequences, and refining her control and touch. Her fingers grew stronger, more agile, moving over the keys with increasing confidence. The support of her family was crucial during this time. They celebrated small victories with her, reminding her that every step forward was an achievement. Her mother sometimes played duets with her, encouraging subtle nuances and expression. Her father clapped and hummed along, adding rhythm and warmth. They never dismissed the hurt she had felt, instead helping her channel it into motivation. In these quiet, loving sessions, she found the strength to overcome the sting of criticism. Alongside her intense practice, she began to develop her own style. She realized that music was not just about hitting the right notes but conveying feeling and telling a story. Her improvisations became more fluid and expressive, and she learned to add dynamics and subtle changes in tempo to enhance the emotional impact. Music, for her, was a language that could speak louder than words. She understood that her uniqueness, including her blindness, gave her a sensitivity that others might not have. It allowed her to feel music deeply and to play with authenticity. Word of her talent slowly began to spread. Friends from school and neighbors would ask to hear her play. Sometimes, small gatherings would form in her living room, where she would perform pieces she had perfected or create new ones on the spot. The audience was always struck by the maturity and emotion in her music. People started to see her not just as a talented child, but as someone whose music could touch hearts. These experiences bolstered her confidence, reminding her that while some people might doubt her, Many others appreciated and valued her gift. Still, the memory of the famous pianist's comment lingered. It became a quiet motivation, a reminder that she had to continue to grow, not for revenge or recognition, but to fulfill her own potential. She imagined herself performing on bigger stages, sharing her music with audiences who would understand its depth. The thought of proving that talent and dedication could overcome prejudice gave her a sense of purpose. Every practice session became a step toward that goal. During this time, she also learned about the importance of preparation and focus. Performing for others was not just about technical skill. It required mental strength and emotional readiness. She practiced concentrating under distractions, imagining the sounds of the audience and the feel of the piano keys, preparing herself for situations where nerves or pressure might interfere. She learned to take a deep breath, center herself, and trust her instincts. Each challenge she faced, each piece she mastered, strengthened not only her fingers but her mind. She also began to understand empathy through her music. She realized that every listener brought their own experiences, and that her music could evoke different emotions for each person. This insight allowed her to play with intention, choosing tempos, dynamics, and phrasing that could communicate hope, joy, sadness, or triumph. Her performances became not just demonstrations of skill, but shared emotional experiences. Music, she realized, could bridge gaps that words could not. Her teacher noticed these changes and praised her growth, not only technically but as a musician who could move people. The teacher often reminded her that true musicianship was about more than applause or recognition. It was about connecting, inspiring, and expressing something real. These lessons became deeply ingrained in her, shaping the way she approached music and life. Months passed, and she continued to improve. She prepared for another opportunity, one where she could perform in front of a larger audience and perhaps, one day, face the pianist again. The thought was no longer frightening. Instead, it motivated her to refine her pieces, explore more challenging compositions, and perfect the subtleties of expression. She felt ready, knowing that her music could finally reflect the depth of her dedication and the resilience of her spirit. Along the way, she encountered both encouragement and skepticism. Some people doubted that a blind girl could truly master the piano, while others were amazed at her ability. Each response reinforced her understanding that she could not control how others perceived her, only how she approached her craft. This insight gave her a sense of freedom. She played not for validation, but because music was an essential part of her being, a channel through which she could communicate and inspire. Through persistence, patience, and unwavering love for her art, she reached a point where her confidence returned fully. She no longer feared judgment but embraced challenges as opportunities. She understood that her talent was a combination of natural ability, hard work, and emotional insight. She began to dream bigger, imagining herself performing in concert halls, sharing her music with people who might never have thought to listen to someone like her. She knew the journey would not be easy, but she was ready to face it. The experience with the famous pianist had left its mark, but not as a scar. It became a catalyst. It pushed her to grow, to refine her talent, and to develop the inner strength necessary to face a world that sometimes underestimated her. She realized that her value was not in the approval of one person but in the power of her music and the impact it could have on those who heard it. In those quiet hours of practice, in the small moments of triumph and failure, she built the foundation for something extraordinary. She was not just a blind girl who played the piano. She was a young musician with a voice that could captivate hearts, challenge assumptions, and inspire hope. Part of her journey had been shaped by criticism, but much more was shaped by determination, love, and the belief that music could transcend any limitation. Her story was only beginning, and the world had yet to witness the full power of her gift. After the encounter with the famous pianist, she understood that her journey was far from over. The experience had shaken her, but it had also lit a fire within her. She became determined to improve not just her technical skills but the emotional power of her music. Every day, she would spend hours at the piano, exploring new pieces and refining her ability to express feelings through sound. Music became more than a hobby. It was her lifeline, her way of speaking to the world, and a means to prove to herself that she could rise above doubt. Her practice was disciplined but creative. She didn't just play the notes. She listened to each sound, feeling its weight and resonance. She experimented with different tempos, dynamics, and phrasing. Sometimes, she would close her eyes and imagine a story behind the music, letting her emotions guide her fingers. The piano became an extension of herself, a voice that could convey the thoughts and feelings she could not always express with words. The more she played, the more she discovered about herself, her resilience, and her potential. Her family remained her constant support. Her mother would play alongside her, creating harmonies that lifted her spirits. Her father would clap rhythms or hum along, adding warmth and energy. These moments were never about performance or competition. They were about connection, encouragement, and love. Her parents understood that she needed both challenge and comfort, and they carefully nurtured her growth. Their belief in her abilities was unwavering, and that belief became a source of inner strength she could draw upon when the world seemed harsh. She also sought guidance from mentors who recognized her talent. One mentor, a pianist experienced in teaching students with disabilities, offered a different perspective. He emphasized the importance of listening, feeling, and interpreting music, rather than just playing the notes perfectly. With his guidance, she began to see the piano as more than an instrument. It was a medium through which she could tell stories and touch hearts. This insight transformed the way she approached every practice session, turning technical exercises into opportunities to communicate emotions. Despite the progress she was making, she still faced moments of doubt. Sometimes, after struggling with a difficult passage or making a mistake, she would feel frustrated and discouraged. The world outside continued to hold judgments, and she could sense skepticism in people's voices and eyes. Yet, she learned to accept these moments as part of her journey. She reminded herself that every musician, no matter how talented, encounters obstacles. What mattered was her persistence, her ability to keep going, and her willingness to grow from each experience. As her skill developed, she began to imagine her music reaching larger audiences. She dreamed of performing in concert halls and sharing her work with people who might never have believed in her talent. The thought of facing a world that doubted her no longer frightened her. It motivated her. She knew that she could not control everyone's opinion, but she could control her preparation, her effort, and her emotional connection to the music. Each note she played became a step toward that dream. Each piece mastered a testament to her determination. During this period, she started to compose her own music. Her compositions were raw and emotional, inspired by her experiences, her struggles, and her triumphs. She would write melodies that told stories of hope, resilience, and joy, sometimes adding small imperfections that made them feel human and real. These compositions allowed her to explore her creativity fully and gave her a sense of ownership over her musical voice. She discovered that the act of creating music was just as fulfilling as performing it. Her practice sessions were intense but also full of exploration. She would challenge herself with difficult pieces that pushed her technical limits, then experiment with improvisation, letting her imagination guide her. Sometimes, she would imagine herself performing in a grand hall, feeling the energy of the audience and imagining the sound carrying across the room. These mental exercises helped her prepare for future performances, teaching her to stay calm under pressure and to trust her instincts. One of the most important lessons she learned during this time was patience. Progress was not always linear, and setbacks were inevitable. She learned to approach each challenge with a calm mind, breaking difficult pieces into smaller parts and focusing on mastering them one step at a time. She celebrated small victories and used mistakes as learning opportunities. This patience extended beyond music, shaping her character and giving her resilience in other areas of life. Her confidence grew alongside her skill. She no longer played only for herself or her family. She played to connect with others. Friends and neighbors would gather to listen, often moved by the depth and authenticity of her performances. She realized that music had the power to reach people in ways words could not. Her talent was no longer just a personal gift. It was a bridge between her world and the world around her. At the same time, she continued to face skepticism. Some people could not see past her blindness, assuming that it limited her abilities. They doubted that she could truly master the piano or perform on big stages. But she understood that these doubts were not a reflection of her talent. They were a reflection of ignorance. She chose not to let these judgments define her. Instead, she focused on the music, letting her performances speak for themselves. Each time she played, she proved quietly and powerfully that ability is not limited by sight. During this period, she also learned the importance of emotional control. Performing in front of an audience could be intimidating, and nerves sometimes threatened to take over. She practiced visualizing the performance, imagining herself confident, calm, and fully immersed in the music. Breathing exercises and mental focus became part of her routine, teaching her that emotional preparation was as important as technical mastery. These skills helped her develop the poise necessary to face challenges and embrace opportunities. She also began to develop a sense of responsibility for her music. She understood that her talent was a gift, and that it could inspire and uplift others. This realization motivated her to practice diligently, to push beyond her comfort zone, and to approach every piece with intention and care. She wanted her music to be more than notes on a page. It needed to convey feeling, tell a story, and leave an impact on those who listened. Her mentors and family noticed the transformation. She was no longer just a talented child. She had become a young musician with a clear vision, emotional depth, and technical skill. Her performances carried a maturity that belied her age, and her compositions reflected a unique perspective shaped by her experiences. People who listened to her play often remarked on the emotional resonance of her music, saying it moved them in ways they could not explain. With each passing month, she became more prepared for the next big step. She practiced with renewed focus, tackling pieces that challenged her physically and emotionally. She imagined herself performing again, possibly in front of the pianist who had doubted her. The thought no longer intimidated her, it fueled her determination. She wanted to show not just that she could play, but that she could communicate, inspire, and leave a lasting impression through her music. As her confidence grew, she also developed a deeper understanding of music's emotional power. She realized that technical skill alone was not enough. True musicianship required feeling, expression, and authenticity. She experimented with subtle changes in tempo, dynamics, and articulation to convey emotions more effectively. Each performance became an opportunity to tell a story, to connect with the audience, and to express a part of herself that words could never capture. Through this period of preparation, practice, and growth, she became ready for the challenges ahead. She had learned resilience, patience, and the importance of emotional connection. She had transformed doubt into motivation and criticism into a driving force. Her talent had grown, but more importantly, so had her character, her determination, and her understanding of music as a powerful means of expression. In the quiet hours at the piano, she continued to explore, create, and refine. Each piece she played brought her closer to the person she wanted to become. A musician capable of moving hearts, breaking assumptions, and proving that obstacles, no matter how daunting, could be overcome. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she had built the foundation for something extraordinary. The fire inside her burned brighter than ever, guiding her forward on the path toward triumph, recognition, and the moment when the world would finally see what she was truly capable of. The day of her big performance arrived. She had been preparing for months, pushing herself to new limits, and refining every piece she planned to play. As she entered the concert hall, the scale of the place was overwhelming. Rows of seats stretched far back, and the polished stage reflected the soft lights above. She could feel the vibrations in the floor, hear the subtle hum of the audience, and smell the scent of wood and varnish that always seemed to accompany grand pianos. Despite the nerves, she took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was ready. She had prepared, she had practiced, and her music carried a piece of her soul. Backstage, there was a quiet moment of reflection. She sat at the edge of the stage, hands folded in her lap, feeling the familiar calluses on her fingertips. The piano awaited her, a trusted friend that had accompanied her through years of doubt, practice, and discovery. She thought of the pianist who had once mocked her, of the long hours of preparation, of the family and mentors who had believed in her. Those memories gave her strength. She knew this was not just a performance. It was a culmination of her journey, a chance to show the world what dedication, talent, and heart could achieve. When her name was announced, she rose and walked to the grand piano at the center of the stage. The applause from the audience was warm, but she felt a calm determination within herself. She adjusted the bench, placed her hands lightly on the keys, and closed her eyes. The moment stretched for a heartbeat, then she began to play. From the first note, the music flowed naturally, guided by memory, emotion, and intuition. The audience listened in silence, drawn into the story she was telling without words. Her performance was a mixture of technical skill and raw emotion. Each note carried intention, each chord conveyed meaning. She played pieces she had mastered over months, along with some of her own compositions. In the pauses between phrases, the silence itself became part of the music, emphasizing the depth and feeling she poured into each sound. She felt the music resonate not just in the piano, but in herself, as though the hall, the audience, and the piano were all part of a single, shared experience. Somewhere in the crowd, she sensed the presence of the pianist who had doubted her. She did not play for him, but she felt a quiet resolve to let her music speak for her. The thought of proving herself was not about revenge or pride. It was about sharing her passion and showing the power of perseverance. She let her hands move freely, trusting her years of practice, and allowing her emotions to guide her fingers. The music became an extension of her being, full of life, vulnerability, and strength. As she moved through the pieces, the audience was captivated. They could sense the intensity and honesty in her playing. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned forward, trying to absorb every nuance. The performance was not just sound. It was feeling, a story unfolding through rhythm, melody, and harmony. People felt the emotion in the pauses, in the gentle crescendos, and in the quiet, lingering notes. Her music spoke in ways that words could not, and the audience responded with quiet awe. Her fingers danced across the keys, sometimes delicate, sometimes forceful, always precise yet full of expression. She moved seamlessly from one piece to another, each transition smooth, each note intentional. The hall seemed to vibrate with the energy of her performance, and she could sense the connection she was building with the listeners. Every sigh, every small gasp, every murmur of appreciation confirmed that her music was reaching hearts. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that all the years of struggle, doubt, and practice had led to this moment. When she reached the final piece, she poured every ounce of emotion into it. It was a composition she had written herself, inspired by her journey and the people who had supported her. The notes rose and fell with intensity, capturing the highs and lows of her experience. She played with abandon, letting the music tell the story of perseverance, hope, and triumph. The final chord lingered in the air, and for a moment, there was silence. The audience absorbed the last note, as if holding their breath, and then erupted into applause. The applause was overwhelming, filling the hall with sound and energy. She opened her eyes, and tears welled up as she felt the collective appreciation of the audience. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. She bowed, feeling a mix of humility, gratitude, and joy. The performance had been more than she could have imagined. She had not just played music. She had shared herself, and the response was profound. After the performance, the pianist who had once mocked her approached. This time, there was no doubt in his expression, only admiration. He spoke quietly, acknowledging the depth of her talent and the power of her performance. The words were not necessary. The respect was clear in his demeanor. She felt a sense of closure, not because she needed his approval, but because the journey had come full circle. The music itself had spoken, and that was enough. The experience changed her in many ways. She realized that true triumph was not about defeating someone else, but about overcoming her own doubts and fears. She had learned the value of persistence, patience, and emotional honesty. She had discovered that her music could touch lives, inspire hope, and communicate feelings beyond words. That understanding gave her a sense of purpose that went beyond personal achievement. In the days that followed, she received invitations to perform in other venues, both large and small. Each opportunity was a chance to share her music with a new audience, to continue connecting with people through sound and emotion. She also began mentoring younger students, particularly those facing challenges similar to her own. She wanted to pass on the lessons she had learned, that talent could flourish with dedication, that obstacles could be overcome, and that music could be a source of strength and inspiration. Her family continued to support her every step of the way. They attended every performance they could, offering encouragement and sharing in her successes. Her mother often played alongside her in smaller recitals, while her father continued to create rhythms and support her musical explorations. The bond they shared through music deepened, and she often reflected on how crucial their love and guidance had been to her growth. The performance had also deepened her own understanding of herself. She knew that her blindness was not a limitation but part of what made her perspective unique. It had given her sensitivity, focus, and a way of feeling music that others might not experience. Her journey had been shaped by both obstacles and support, and she had emerged stronger, more confident, and more connected to the music she loved. Through this experience, she began to see her role as more than a performer. She was a storyteller, a communicator, and an inspiration. Her music carried messages of hope, resilience, and the power of perseverance. People who heard her play often left feeling moved, inspired, and encouraged. She understood that her talent was not just for personal fulfillment but for the impact it could have on others. She also learned to embrace the vulnerability that came with performing. Each performance required her to open her heart, to trust herself, and to allow others to feel her emotions. That vulnerability, she realized, was a strength, not a weakness. It was what allowed her music to resonate, to connect, and to leave a lasting impression. As her journey continued, she remained humble and focused. She practiced diligently, explored new compositions, and sought out opportunities to grow. Each performance was a reminder of how far she had come, and each audience was a chance to share the gift that had shaped her life. She understood that success was not just about skill or recognition, but about the connection, emotion, and authenticity she brought to every note. The performance marked a turning point, a moment when her dedication, talent, and resilience had been fully realized. It was proof that obstacles could be overcome, that passion and perseverance could triumph, and that music could communicate what words sometimes could not. She had transformed doubt into strength, fear into confidence, and her love for music into a powerful force that touched lives. Looking back, she knew that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, new pieces to master, and audiences to reach. But she also knew that she had the strength, skill, and heart to face whatever came next. The world had seen what she was capable of, and more importantly, she had discovered the power within herself. Her music had become a voice, a beacon, and a story that would continue to unfold with every note she played. After the performance that had left the audience in awe, her life began to change in ways she had only dreamed of. The recognition she received was not just about applause or praise. It was about being seen for who she truly was, a talented musician whose passion and dedication had overcome doubt and limitation. Invitations to perform came from all over, from local halls to larger cities, each opportunity a chance to share her music and inspire others. She approached each performance with the same care and focus that had carried her through her journey. She practiced diligently, studying new pieces, refining her technique, and exploring ways to deepen the emotional impact of her playing. Each audience became part of her story, each note a way to connect and communicate. She realized that her music could transcend barriers, touching people regardless of age, background, or ability. Her fame grew, but she remained humble. she never let recognition overshadow the joy of music itself. She remembered the early days when she had struggled to press the right keys, when critics and skeptics had doubted her abilities, and when her only audience was her family. Those memories kept her grounded, reminding her that every step forward was earned through effort, patience, and heart. The pianist who had once mocked her sought her out after hearing of her success. This time there was no doubt, no ridicule, only respect. He acknowledged her talent, expressing admiration for the depth and emotion she brought to her performances. She accepted his words gracefully, but more importantly, she realized that her validation did not depend on anyone else. She had proven to herself what she was capable of, and that was the most meaningful triumph of all. With her growing reputation, she began to use her platform to inspire others. She visited schools, community centers, and music programs, sharing her story and performing for young students, especially those with disabilities. She wanted them to know that obstacles could be overcome, that passion and dedication could open doors, and that music could give them a voice even when the world seemed to ignore them. Her presence, her story, and her music became a source of hope and encouragement. Her family continued to support her, attending performances whenever possible and celebrating every achievement. They remained her anchor, a reminder of where she had come from and the love that had nurtured her talent. Her relationship with them was not just personal. It was a source of inspiration, grounding her in humility and gratitude. The bond they shared over music grew stronger, and their encouragement continued to fuel her growth and creativity. Over time, she began composing more original pieces. Each composition reflected her journey, her emotions, and her experiences. She wrote music that told stories of hope, struggle, triumph, and joy. Some pieces were gentle and introspective, while others were bold and powerful. Audiences responded to her compositions with wonder, feeling the emotion embedded in each note. She realized that her creativity was limitless and that she could continue to grow as a musician for the rest of her life. Her performances became more than concerts, they became shared experiences. She could feel the audience's reactions in real time, the way people leaned in, held their breath, or whispered in awe. She understood the responsibility that came with her talent. Every performance was an opportunity to touch hearts, to communicate without words, and to leave a lasting impact. Her music became a bridge, connecting her experiences and emotions with the listener's own feelings and memories. Even as recognition and opportunities expanded, she remained focused on her growth. She sought new mentors, studied diverse styles of music, and explored ways to challenge herself. She learned that mastery was a journey, not a destination, and that each performance, each practice session, was a step toward deeper understanding. She embraced both success and failure, knowing that every experience contributed to her development as a musician and as a person. Through her journey, she became a symbol of perseverance and inspiration. People admired her not just for her skill, but for her resilience, her grace, and the authenticity she brought to her music. She demonstrated that obstacles could be overcome, that talent could flourish with effort, and that passion could touch hearts in profound ways. Her story resonated with anyone who had faced doubt or adversity, giving them hope and courage to pursue their own dreams. She also understood the importance of giving back. She established workshops and music programs for children with disabilities, ensuring that they had access to instruments, lessons, and mentorship. She wanted them to know that their dreams were valid and that their abilities were not limited by circumstance. She became a mentor and role model, guiding young musicians and helping them discover the power of their own voices. Her performances continued to captivate audiences worldwide. Each concert was approached with the same focus and dedication as her first, but with added confidence and emotional depth. She played with freedom, letting the music guide her, and allowing her heart to communicate what words could not. People often remarked on the emotional intensity of her playing, noting how it seemed to touch something deep within them. Her music became a universal language, connecting people across cultures and backgrounds. Even with her success, she never lost sight of the personal reasons she played music. It remained her outlet, her source of joy, and her means of self-expression. She cherished quiet moments at the piano, improvising, composing, and exploring new melodies. These moments were her own, a reminder that no matter how far she traveled or how many people admired her, music was ultimately about connection, creativity, and the expression of her soul. The journey had taught her lessons far beyond the piano. She learned resilience, patience, and the power of determination. She learned that criticism and doubt could be transformed into motivation, and that success was measured not only by recognition but by the impact one had on others. She understood that true accomplishment came from passion, authenticity, and the courage to persevere, even when the world seemed unkind or indifferent. As her career continued, she inspired countless others. Her story was shared in articles, interviews, and documentaries, reaching people who might never have heard her music otherwise. She became an example of how talent, hard work, and perseverance could overcome challenges, and how dedication to one's craft could leave a lasting impact. She had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of music. Looking back, she realized how far she had come from the small girl who had first touched a piano without knowing what it could become. The journey had been filled with challenges, doubt, and hard work, but it had also been filled with love, encouragement, and discovery. Every step, every note, every performance had shaped her into the musician she had become. The world had witnessed her talent, but she had discovered something even more valuable: the strength, courage, and passion within herself. Her life continued to be dedicated to music, but also to the people she could inspire through it. She performed, composed, taught, and shared her story, always remembering the lessons learned and the obstacles overcome. Her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of belief in oneself, and the beauty of expressing one's soul through art. In the end, her story was more than a tale of talent. It was a story of courage, resilience, and triumph. It was about a girl who refused to be defined by her limitations, who faced doubt and ridicule with determination, and who transformed her challenges into inspiration for herself and others. Through music, she spoke to the world, and in doing so, she left a mark that would endure long after the final note had faded. Her journey, her music, and her spirit continued to dazzle, uplift, and inspire, proving that the heart, when guided by passion and perseverance, can overcome anything.